Accomplished violinist Joshua Bell plays his Stradivarius on the grand stages of the world, but he sometimes feels the urge to return to a North Country venue, one of the places where he first impressed an audience as a student musician. Meadowmount School of Music in Westport, New York is a summer program for skilled young students of string instruments. And that's where the Manhattan-based musician and I had a chat about his time at the acclaimed school and the music that underscored his recent visit. A melody played by renowned musician Joshua Bell resounded through the performance hall at Meadowmount during his recent visit. The seasoned professional once performed the same piece on the same stage decades earlier when he was studying at Meadowmount. Well, how special is it for you to be back at Meadowmount School of Music for the second time since you went through the program?
It's actually mind-blowing for me. I actually haven't been here for 30 years. So I came here as an 11-year-old, 3 summers, 11 through 13, formative years as a musician, as a person. I mean, it was just so many memories. And I came back once, maybe 10 years later, to play for the kids. And now, 30 more years later, this time I'm bringing my 13-year-old twins, boys, who are exactly the age I was when I last left as a student. So it's really weird to see them as my age in this environment, and I wanted them to see it because of how important it was to me.
And as you look at your kids who are your age at that time, do you remember any particular lessons you learned at Meadowmount that affected your entire career?
Well, for one, I learned how to practice because they've been hearing about it as well. You know, I've always, the legend of Meadowmount, 5 hours a day of practice for every kid, which is quite a bit more than any of us, any kid that ever came here, well, maybe there were a few, but had ever done before.
I had never practiced more than an hour a day before I came here.
And I was scared of it when I was a kid, but I do remember coming here and being required to practice for 5 hours a day, but everyone else was doing it as well. So there was a kind of camaraderie, and it made me realize that it's not so bad to practice, and it's fun when everybody else is working, and then we take a break and play ping pong and go back to work. I kind of learned how to practice, which is very important as a musician. Of course, so many other memories of lessons with great masters. The man who founded this place, Ivan Galamian, I was lucky to catch his last 2 years before he died. And he gave me a few lessons. He was very, very old, but I was scared to death of him. So it kind of made me really practice even more.
Practice does make you better, as you realize. So to practice that much, it changed my life a lot.
Memories of practicing near the trees and mountains confronted Bell as he proudly showed his sons the Meadowmount campus. The tour included a dorm room where he used to sleep and practice.
Looks a lot smaller. Yeah, well, you were a lot smaller then too. This was my room for 2 summers.
He also visited the cafeteria where he'd squeeze in meals between hours of practice. Now, what piece are you going to play for the Meadowmount students tonight?
I'm performing the Paganini Violin Concerto there. Now, at Meadowmount, my last year at Meadowmount in 1981, I performed the Paganini Concerto for the first time. I learned it in 4 weeks. It's one of the most difficult pieces for the violin, technically. I learned it, probably performed it way too soon, but they put me out there. It was a kind of a turning point in my career. I was a very shy kid, and I think most people had not heard me really play before, and it was my first time I kind of stood out, I think, and played this flashy piece, and I got a lot of attention. And as a shy kid, it was maybe very happy and a little bit startling, but it was very momentous for me as a person, that Paganini Concerto. So it's always stuck in my mind as an important moment. And I thought, you know, now's the time to come back to Meadowmount, and maybe I could even play the Paganini for them as a kind of full circle back here. And I've also just recorded it as well for the first time. As a child, I played it, and I had the technique for it, and just barely. But now, as an adult coming back to it, I approach it in a completely different way. Of course, it's got all this gratuitous and amazing technical things, but it's actually just a beautiful little opera for the violin. It's a dramatic and got all these musical things, which I now have a perspective is so different. And unfortunately, this is a type of piece, along with many others, that is usually these days relegated to the young virtuosos. And then as you mature as an artist, you leave it to them and start doing the Brahms and the Mozarts and the Beethovens. But we forget that there's great music in some of these lighter but fantastic works that were written by violinists, things that Beethoven would not even know how to write for a violin this way. Paganini knew how to write for the violin in a way that takes the violin to another technical level. So these are pieces really worth playing, and the Paganini is a real gem.
Bell's performance also celebrates his skills as a composer. He wrote the cadenza himself. That's a solo passage inserted into a piece to showcase a musician's virtuosic talents. Well, it's going to be very special for these students to be able to hear you perform, for them returning to Meadowmount. Why is that so important, that a professional such as yourself returns to this campus to perform for the students?
Well, I remember when I was a student, we had one example was the amazing violinist Kyung-Hwa Chung. She would have been 10 or 15 years older than me. At that time, she seemed like, much older. Now I realize it's not that much older, but she was already recording and concertizing, and she came and visited us and played Vivaldi's Four Seasons, and it made a huge impact on me. And so it is a kind of an important thing to pass on to the next generation, whatever your knowledge and I'm going to have a Q&A with them and talk about my career and what I do, what it's like to be, a touring violinist now for so many years.
I never thought of myself as soloist or this is, I'm going to be a soloist. I just don't think in those terms. I'm a violinist, and that means everything. So now I'm trying to do that. I'm conducting, I'm playing with the orchestra. I sit down when I lead Beethoven symphonies with my orchestra. I sit down and direct them from the seat, and so I get to play all the great symphonic repertoire now doing that, which is a thrill.
At Meadowmount, it was a thrill for Bell to see some familiar faces who'd helped shape his life. Portraits of his former instructors, Joseph Gingold and Meadowmount founder Ivan Galamian, hang in the concert hall. And his former counselor, Don Matthews, showed his face to reminisce with the musician. Bell also saw the glee on many new faces, the talented students who were happy to meet a genuine star among string players.
Seeing someone who had come here as a student and has grown up to be so renowned is inspiring. It shows you that the practice schedule here and the structuring of the camp are ideal for these circumstances. They allow you to grow and prosper and sort of hone your skills in a way that most other places wouldn't allow you to, and that's evident in Mr. Bell, as he's now one of the premier violinists in the world.
My big dream is to maybe one day become as good as he is right now. I actually managed to have a chance to take a picture with Joshua Bell during lunchtime. And then, of course, after the concerts, I had to talk to him and say how amazing he was, because it was truly an amazing experience for me to listen to him.
Now you're going to have question and answer with the students. What's an important message you may have for them?
My ultimate goal is to make them see how much I love being a musician. So my advice to them would be to find what you're passionate about. Hopefully it's music. And if you are passionate about it, you can find a way to make a life in music, one way or another. And if you can do that, you're going to be a happy person, because if you can make your job the thing you're passionate about, that's what we all wish for.
On the stage at Meadowmount, pianist Nielsen Chen accompanied Bell for the Paganini Violin Concerto. And the violinist is currently preparing to release an album of the same music next year, this time accompanied by the London-based chamber orchestra, Academy of St. Martin in the Fields. Bell is the music director of the orchestra. Head to joshuabell.com for more information about his recordings and performances. And maybe you'd like to see a concert in the venue where Joshua Bell got his start. You may attend student concerts at Meadowmount School of Music in Westport from June 30th until August 7th, every Sunday at 5 p.m., Wednesdays and Fridays at 7:30 p.m. Visit meadowmount.org for information about concerts from students, faculty, and guest artists, including Grammy winners Jesse Montgomery and James Ennis, another Meadowmount alumnus. Performances at Meadowmount are free and open to the public, with donations gratefully accepted.
Spotlight is supported by the Glenn and Carol Pearsall Adirondack Foundation, dedicated to improving the quality of life for year-round residents of the Adirondack Park.